Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Johnny King with the Johnny King Show. Oh man, I'm stoked to have Sam Gibbs Morris in the house, all the way from Tulum. What's up, man?
What's going on, brother? How you doing? Thanks
I'm
for having
good.
me.
Oh man, so good to have you. We were chatting before I hit record here. You got some epic trips coming up. Speakers, so you've been doing a ton of work. Crazy how much life has changed for you just in the last year since like COVID and everything else with relocating down south. And I want to get into all the good stuff, but thanks for being here. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, man, it's great to be here. Thanks again. Yeah, life is definitely I don't know, up leveled, evolved,
Yeah.
accelerated, all the
Yeah.
things.
Tell the listeners, the viewers, a little bit more about maybe your backstory and what kind of brought you even to where you're at, living from Tulum, Mexico, because it's so beautiful down there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is beautiful. Yeah, and where do I start? That's a really great question. This is going to be good. So, I came down here in January, and I
Of
didn't.
2021.
Yeah, and I'd seen Tulum on Instagram and whatever else, and like that place looks awesome. I would love to go. I had never been to Mexico, and I literally went into. I was in a part of FFS Mastermind, which is Fit for Service. Aubrey Marcus does it, and his challenge that week was to go into the darkness. So either go into a very dark room or go into a float tank, something like that. And so it was a Saturday morning, and I went into a float tank. And like, it was just like this screaming voice almost was like, go to Tulum. Like, why aren't you going to Tulum? Like, and I had made up, like, I had this in my head that like, oh, that's something that I'll never reach. Like almost like a far flung dream. But it was clear, like in that darkness that like, I don't have any reason not to go at this point. Like I can do what I do from anywhere. I've created this life of a digital nomad, and it's like, what am I doing just like anchoring myself to Austin? And not to say Austin's a bad place, it's not, it's amazing. But like I just was like, I'm gonna go. I got a one-way ticket on that afternoon, and I was gone Monday morning.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so how this ties into my whole story is that when I got here, at first there's like being in a foreign country, not really speaking the language, there's a bit of chaos, a little chaotic feeling. The cars get really close to each other here. Like it seems really overwhelming at first, but once that went away, like 3 or 4 days in, and I settled into like a routine and just being here and figuring out how the cadence of culture here and all that stuff goes, the big thing that I noticed was that my central nervous system was just like, maybe it like operates at like an 11 or a 12 in the United States. It was at like a 3 or a 4. And far as like a fight or flight response kind of thing. And this wasn't noticeable. Like, it wasn't like I was like hyper anxious or super out of control when I was in the United States. It was just like, so 45 years is so used to that cadence and that level of just intensity.
Totally.
And I got here and it was like, I felt like I could breathe. I felt like a weight was lifted. And I did a bufo ceremony on the beach with a buddy of mine that lives down here, and he does that. And I was standing in the water after the ceremony, and I looked back at the shore, and I was just like, oh, like something that I thought was just not possible for me for some reason is now happening. Like really, like I'm here in Mexico looking at these palm trees and crystal clear Caribbean water, like just did the ceremony, like things are like, this is like amazing. And that was when it occurred to me that like when I can like shut off those energetic cords that I had energetic cords of like addiction, childhood trauma, broken relationships, heartbreak, all these things, like 45 years of living in the United States, of like different places I've lived and things I had done a lot of healing and work from, but still they're there. And when I was able to separate myself from that, it was amazing, the clarity and the, like, it was in that moment that I was in the water there, that my purpose, why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing became clear to me. And it was, I'm here to help men heal from shit they're scared to talk about. Bottom line, like don't try and romanticize it or make it sexy for Instagram. Like that's just it. Like I'm just here to hold space for men to heal, and because that's what's been provided to me.
Yeah.
And so now it's my job to turn around and do that, not for just for other men that I'm talking to, but like for the generations before me and my family and my lineage and the generations to come. Like I want to make a huge impact. 1 billion human beings is my impact that I want to make. And I'm going to do that through working with these guys. And so, as I got this clarity, like it became clear that like, and I had already started this work, but like my childhood on the surface, like even I looked back at it for 35 or so years as like, that was amazing. Like growing up in Vermont, clean air, clean food,
Totally.
like all farm to table, like organic by default, like all these great things. And playing tennis and golf every day, every summer, skiing in the mountains every winter, like going on trips to the Bahamas and New York City and DC and Boston and like Florida. Like, I mean, it was just amazing. Love in the household, like not a lot of fighting, parties all the time. But I was super sick. I had really, really bad asthma, really, really bad, like a long list of food and environmental allergies. I had a tendency to choke on my food all the time when I was a kid. So I had the Heimlich maneuver done on me like 5 or 6 times as a kid. And so like that, I operated kind of not over that, but I just, in spite of that almost, like that was normal for me. And that was a core belief for me. And part of that core belief was I need to be saved. You know, like, because that was the only way I knew that I was going to survive was like, if I'm 8 years old and I have an asthma attack at 2 a.m, not a lot I can do for myself at that point. Like I'm going to need someone to come save me, mom, dad, rush me to the hospital 45 minutes away, and I'll be in the hospital for a week. And that happened 4 or 5 times a year, whether it was an asthma attack or an allergic reaction. Then the Heimlich maneuver was, 5 or 6 times throughout my childhood. And so all this stuff like that I had not even acknowledged was all of a sudden coming back to roost, so to speak. You know, when I got older, when I got into my 30s, like it showed up as addiction. It showed up as alcoholism and cocaine addiction, and it showed up as broken relationships. Because when I get in a relationship, I immediately say, like, if I'm with a girl and we fall in love, like there's no question it's real love. However, subconsciously underlying that, that's a contract. That girl just signed a contract with me that says you are now responsible for saving me. Whatever happens, whatever I do, if I get insecure, like whenever my shit comes up, you're responsible for saving me. And that means like, and I've done some not so great things as a boyfriend that I subconsciously would expect saving from, and then the girl leaves, and so I don't feel saved. I feel abandoned, which is like a fate worse than death.
Right.
Like for me, that's like the ultimate just jab in the heart, like I'm gonna die basically. And so that triggers depression and anxiety. And so, growing up with all that stuff as a child, I was very withdrawn, so I developed social anxiety. I felt a lot different than my peers. Social anxiety. I was very quiet and protective, and there's a difference between vigilance and observance. And so as a child, I had to be very vigilant. Like the world was a threat to me. People were threats to me. Food was a threat to me. Air was a threat to me. And so I had to be super vigilant about like my world around me, the people around me, what was going on. Like my radar was up all the time. And so vigilance is fear-based. That's a fear-based thing. Like I'm looking out for threats all the time. And then as I got older and as I started to get, after I got sober and I really started to dive into this work about my traumas and healing and all this stuff, it became shifting out of vigilance and into observance, where observance is a love-based, patient, take on the situation.
And curiosity, right?
Curiosity, yeah. It's like, okay, like, and it's helpful to be, it's a heightened level of awareness, which I've, is basically built into my DNA because of how I was raised, how I grew up. But it went from being fear-based to like, I'm just here, I'm just witnessing. And that's a much better place. That's a fight or flight drops down a lot. And so, over the course of the past 8 or 9 years since I stopped drinking, I've done a lot of work and gotten to the bottom of a lot of things, and it's really opened up a lot of freedom for me. A lot of freedom in like my own mind, my own body. Like I couldn't trust my body. Like that was one of the big things I took from being a kid with that asthma and allergies, is that like, if I go running around in the spring in Vermont when the trees are blooming, 999 times out of 1,000, I'm probably going to get an asthma attack. It's just a matter of when, not if. And so that and like, or if I go to birthday parties and like there's a cake or cupcakes and they like, there's a high probability, again, not if, but when am I going to eat a peanut by accident? And like, that's anaphylaxis. So, I just had to like heal from all those things, all that, like that state of being, into like a more or less like awareness, patient state of being.
See, what's fascinating about your story, and I resonate with it too, because I can look back at my childhood and say, yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. There wasn't any sexual abuse or physical abuse. There wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you do start to get older and you start seeing patterns, you're like, oh, where is this coming from? You start to trace it back to the simplest of things, which, similar to you, like I used to, there's a period where like I would kind of gag on every food I would eat because I had a choking experience, you know, and then I was almost so scared to swallow because I didn't want to choke. Then I'd force myself to choke, you know?
Yeah.
So, but that type of like experience that you've had where, yeah, life on the outside, and your parents could probably say, what happened to Sam? Like, we gave him an amazing upbringing, but it's still showing that there's just no way to get through childhood, I don't feel like, without having some sort of trauma, you know?
I'd say it's impossible.
Yeah.
Like,
and I can imagine just for you too. It's like being in an environment where just any environment seemed threatening. Like you said, you can't trust your body, right?
Yeah. And like learning to trust my body has been like, that's a self-love thing. Like, you know, like when you can't trust your body, like why would you love yourself?
Right.
Like, really, like I can't, like this body's gonna just like, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna let me down. Like, what is there to love?
Right.
And so with that comes like shame and guilt about it all too. And like, that's a heavy one to carry with you, which I've actually, like in the past couple of years, just started unpacking the shame and the guilt, because that runs deep. You know, and so
tell the listeners a little bit more about how, like, what's the process for that? Because I feel like shame, especially for guys, is so it's an undercurrent to like almost everything. How are you starting to process? Because I think it's such a relevant topic for men these days.
You know, compassion's huge. Like having compassion for yourself, just understanding that, like, you know, we all operate from our level of consciousness at the time that things happen. So if we have shame, like I had a lot of shame around my addiction. I had a lot of shame around being sick as a kid, which you could say I had no control over. I think I believe that I chose it because it was something that I needed as a kid to matter. And there's a story about my mom's pregnancy that relates to that. But you know, it's having compassion for like what we had to do or what we decided was necessary to survive. And if that creates shame, you have to just face it. Like, look at it. Find another guy, find a therapist, find a coach, find a mastermind, a retreat, something to do that you can say, like, I am shameful about this. And then the other men, or you can feel safe in that, because it's really a very unsafe feeling. To feel shame is like, I'm not good enough. I'm less than. If I'm shameful about this, my wife is going to leave me. My boss is going to fire me. My friends are going to stop hanging out with me, because that's weak. And so vulnerability and compassion and finding the safest place you can to do that. You know, it's like training in a gym. Like, you train to get strong in a gym so that when you go out into the world, you don't have to worry about, you can handle something catastrophic happening, or like if you need to pick up something heavy, you can do that. But you find that safe environment in the gym to do the reps and to lift the weights. And that way, when you go back out into the world, you're a better human being. And so with men, like doing men's work, like that's the thing, like men come to these men's retreats, whatever it is, Sacred Sons, whether it's working with Traver, like whatever it is, like we go to these safe environments so that we can process all this stuff and release it. Because we hold on for, like, I have a tattoo right here that says hold on. And it's not about holding on to stuff, but like it's a reminder not to hold on to things, really. Like, and it says let go over here, but it's the same time, like, we hold on to things because they're familiar. Shame and guilt for like a lot of us men is like a familiar thing, because honestly, if we're shameful and we feel guilty, it makes other people see that. And that means that, oh, he's shameful about what he did. You're right. I'm shameful. I'm going to punish myself. So it creates this cycle of just operating in this shame and guilt behavior, because part of it is we want to make, like, making amends or whatever it is. Like, we think that like punishing ourselves and being shameful and feeling guilty all the time, taking on that other person's anger is being noble, is being a warrior. And it's not. It's not. It's killing us.
Totally. Well, and I love the thought of like, yeah, when you let go, you better hold on because it's like away you go.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a roller coaster. Like,
Yeah, you can go down the let go, hold on conversation could go. We could go for hours of just about that.
100%. But I do feel like, Brene Brown talks a lot about shame, obviously, and I love how she says the shame really just that grows and breeds on itself in secrecy. So I feel like a big part of what you're talking about is men to acknowledge what they're ashamed of, and having that safe place. Because to your point, like, yeah, I can go to the gym and lift, but if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to hurt myself, right? So there's even something to be said about going to the gym and having a trainer, a spotter, someone who knows what they're doing, to the point of like, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a guy that's listening, who resonates already with your story, needs some support. It makes all the sense in the world to reach out to you because you've already walked the walk, right? And you can kind of help them stay in a place where they're safe while they're also processing a lot of this trauma, right?
Yeah, a great analogy, like using that gym analogy. Like you go to the gym to avoid being in a position in the real world where you're caught with like having to pick up something too heavy and you throw your back out. A big thing for the guys I work with and I see a lot is anger. Like you come to do the men's work, come to let all that shame and guilt out so that you don't have to go, you don't end up being angry at your wife. Because that lashing out with anger at like coworkers, at wives, at the dog, at your kids, like with friends, like that's not really anger. Anger very rarely really exists. It's grief, it's insecurity, it's fear, it's shame, guilt. Like it's those things manifesting as anger being the easiest way out. And so if you can go to a place and handle all that stuff, the insecurities, the fear, the shame, the guilt, the overwhelm, you won't be angry. The anger will be like, it won't exist. Like you'll be compassionate and soft and loving.
Yeah. I can only speak for myself in the last 6 months and realizing how much anger, a lifetime of anger was boiling up and then starting to boil over. What was underneath the anger was shame. It was a lack of, it was a lot of disappointment, sadness, loneliness, which when I started telling more and more guys, they're like, I totally feel the same thing. Right. So you're right. The anger is just that frustration with like, why is this feeling not going away? And why aren't I as happy as I should be, right?
Or I can't appear scared, so I'll just get angry instead.
Yeah. Whatever the case might be.
And to hear another guy, like you just touched on it, like when the guy's like, oh my God, I feel the same way. Like to have another guy look you in the eye and be like, I see you.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Like, I see you as a man to man. Like I see you. That right. Those 3 words, I see you, are powerful.
And I feel like too, maybe to your point with Sacred Sons, Every Man, Mankind Project, a bunch of the stuff that I've done too. It's like, it's different. It's scary, but it's completely different to do men's work than it is to do personal development work with women in the room. I wouldn't think that, right? Because I always have found comfort in my mom, comfort in the women, comfort in the girlfriends, all the women in my life. It's actually why it's my father wound, if you will, that made me go find the comfort in mama, but to your point, like to find that sense of safety and security in a group of men was the most powerful thing that I've ever experienced, So it's pretty cool. And you're doing that in terms of what? In terms of masterminds or retreats, one-on-one coaching, group coaching. Tell me a little bit more about like how is it that you're supporting men as you're also supporting yourself?
So I mean, the self work is, God, we so badly want to graduate. Me personally, I really would love to graduate, but it's just not something you graduate from. And that's okay. Like I actually, once you start seeing the value in the work, it's like, give me more. What else can I do? Like I'm going to Peru in 10 days to do ayahuasca. Like, give me more healing. Give me more, like, how can I uncover more about my past or why I am the way I am? That's going to make me a better human being for everybody, not just for my clients, but for me, for my family, for future girlfriends, whatever it is. Like, just make me like, how can I be a better human being? And then it stops being work and it starts being like, this is just my process. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. And it's just like the gym. Like, I really don't like going to the gym, but I know for a fact every single time I don't want to go to the gym and I go to the gym, better, always better, never fails.
Never fails.
Same thing with this stuff. So what I do is I offer one-on-one coaching. That's a pretty high touch point. It's pretty intense work. I ask quite a bit of the guys that I work with, but it's very, very, it's very profound to see these guys break through like they do, like with these things that I have them do. And it's a 90-day program. It's 90-day increments. Usually guys end up doing 6 or 9 months. But to see the growth that these guys have, and with this high touch point, pretty intense work. I mean, I'm not to say like all you're doing is my work, but like it's real time life adjustments, real time coaching in like what's going on, how you got here, like why you are the way you are, what led to that, and then what's stopping you from being the guy you want to be. Like I look at that as like, and a lot of my coaching comes down to this, as a glass wall. Like a lot of the guys I work with, and me personally too, like I had reached this pinnacle, this like top of a mountain, so to speak. And I was like, oh, look, got to the top of the mountain, making money, got relationships, got all the things. And then I see this beautiful like oasis in front of me that I want to just like go lay on the beach and enjoy. And I go to step and I smack my face into a glass wall that I didn't see. And then it's like, whoa, what was that? Like, I can't seem to get to that. It's because the things we don't know about are still holding us back. Like you can do all the work and all the healing, but until you can tap into the things you don't know about, you're going to keep hitting that glass wall, and there's no way around it, over it, or under it. You got to just do whatever it is. You got to find out what's fueling that, supporting that glass wall. And then once you do that, the wall will melt away and you can step into whatever life you want. So one-on-one coaching, high touch point, 90 days. The group coaching is I have a 9-week program that I run guys through. And then on the back end of that, there's the offer for the one-on-one, also a mastermind, which is a monthly thing. That's called the Conscious Warrior Brotherhood. And then I do retreats that I'm building. It's called surrender retreats. So one of the big lessons for me over the past really 6 months has been surrender. And so I had a really profound experience with some plant medicine back in December. And like this word surrender just hasn't left my head since.
Right.
And so I had so much so that I went online and tried to buy surrender.com. And of course it wasn't available, but what was available was SURREND, no ER. So surrender with no E at the end. And I was like, well, I guess I'll get that. And then I thought about it and I'm like, that's perfect, because the last thing that needs to go for you to fully surrender and be happy, really, and feel the freedom you want, because all the fighting you're doing is keeping you from that. Like you're fighting to be happy, you're keeping yourself from happiness. You're fighting for freedom, you're keeping yourself from freedom. You got to let go of your ego. So you got to drop the last thing to go is the ego, that last E. Yeah. So surrender retreats, those are going to be happening. I'm looking at starting in 2022, 5 times a year. I have one coming up in September here in Tulum. It's going to be the first one, the launch, which is going to be amazing.
Cool.
And then, so I got the one-on-one, the group program, the mastermind, which is kind of an evolution of the group, and then the retreats that are going to be offering.
Amazing. It's something you said a few minutes back, though, made me think of the movie The Matrix. I'm assuming most people have seen it, but it's like it's almost like you were Neo in the sense of like it's super scary to choose out of the Matrix, but once you did, it's like you were plugged in and downloading. Just give me more, and like and I think that's something that if guys really realize that if you, again, surrender to the fact that again, let the ego go, that you don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
And that maybe you are a little wounded, and that's okay. That doesn't make you, in fact, we're all wounded, but if you actually just kind of relinquish control of your life, man, it actually gets really exciting. It's not easy. Don't get me wrong. Like you're going to go do ayahuasca for 21 days. Like that shit is going to be like a marathon, on a daily basis. But still it's worth it. And it's interesting. I think anyone who's listening to something like this is going to resonate with you because they want more of that too, So 100%. It sounds like you're offering a lot of cool opportunities with the various offerings that you've got in your business to guys to meet them wherever they're at, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's just amplify the impact, right? Like, just like the more I want to make happier wives and children and happier parents, and again, like if I can impact these guys, like one guy, immediately can probably touch 5 or 6 people. Just by making him better, his world gets better. And he's happier because, we're all connection-based creatures, like organisms. And so it's really about like just, again, meeting them where they're at, whatever they can do to drop in and feel safe and just start the healing process.
Yeah,
just gotta start somewhere.
You mentioned earlier too, just a little bit more about like the cords that we have attached maybe to our childhood, like emotional cords. Is that what you're referring to?
Energetic cords, yeah.
Energetic cords.
Like the things that we attach to, whether that's like, that's guilt, shame, and that's like, and it's not, and the thing is that once you can like step out of those cords and realize like, that's not my shame. That's not my guilt. Like maybe that shame was my parents because of the way I behaved when I was an addict, looked bad on them and they're shameful. And so I'm taking that on and trying to, or it could be a girlfriend, it could be anybody else, like, but we tend to take it on because we attach to that energetic cord and that makes us feel like we matter. And so, yeah, like just bad memories of places I've lived and relationships and like just, those dirtied up energetic cords that just, they're so hard to cut because they're so familiar. They feel good. Like an energetic cord to an ex-girlfriend, for example, would be like, it feels like hanging on to hope.
Yeah.
But it's really not. Like you're just energetically, you're wrapped up in the theory of, or the bullshit that happened in the relationship. And like that can be, and again, this goes back to like familiarity versus happiness. Familiarity is not happiness. Familiar is just familiar. And familiar can be happy. Like I'm familiar in my apartment and I'm happy there. But like when you're familiar in chaos, or when you're familiar in depression or anxiety or fear or anger, like we're going to default to that until you can find out the roots of why that's there. And those are the cords. Like a lot of those things are cords. They just need to be cut or cleaned up, really. Like you can clean them up. You don't have to cut them, but some need to be cut. Some can be cleaned up.
100%. And I think you're right. I did a retreat a couple of years ago, and we were given time each afternoon to kind of go out into the wilderness and really focus on and pray towards just cutting those emotional ties, and from all past relationships, and I think that's pretty powerful. Why don't we jump into that a little bit too, because I feel like that's so relevant for anyone that's been in relationship with anyone else, male or female. It's like, what are the things that you've learned and how have you seen your trauma, affect your relationships? Because I think just like you, some of the biggest challenges in my life has been both the romantic and even the ones with my mom when she passed away. It's losing those relationships that have hurt the most, So how have you worked through some of that disappointment? And
I like that you brought up both death and heartbreak in the same conversation, because I'll say I firmly believe that death is easier than heartbreak. Death, like as painful as it is, like there's no way around death. There's a grieving process and it hurts, but there's like, you don't have a choice. Like that's boom, closure.
There's closure.
Like you get like, that's it. It's over. Like you either, you can stay and grieve and be there and do that for a while, but there's no going back from that. And there's the finality there allows healing from my experience. I've lost my dad. I lost my dad in 2015 to heart failure, and then I lost my sister in 2018 to alcoholism. And both times, it was I'm not gonna say it was easy to get over. It wasn't. Like that never is easy. But like when you can get into like the finality of it, and just it turns into like, I'm grieving to I'm honoring. Like the best thing I can do now is like, I can grieve all I want, but really like the real healing begins when you start to like, with my dad, for example, like I've noticed pretty quickly when he passed away that like I used to call him for advice, be like, hey, I'm thinking about buying a car. What do you suggest I do? Or like, I'm buying a house, like what these things that like dad advice, dad wisdom. And like, and I would have to like call him up. Oh, I missed the call. Leave a voicemail. Give me a call back. I'm thinking about buying this car. And then like, 2 or 3 days goes by and like we're going back and forth in these voicemails because it's hard to get a hold of people. But like when he passed away, it was like he was there like that. Like it wasn't, I didn't have to make a phone call. Like I knew intuitively, like all his downloads, all his information that he'd given me was there because I didn't have the fallback. The finality of it was I didn't have that crutch to rely on, but I knew what he would, I knew what he was going to say on the phone anyways. I just wanted to hear him say it. And now I get to the point where like I can operate with his knowledge and wisdom, but I don't have to wait to hear him say it. And so like there's that level of connection increases with death, within that finality. And that's, you know, taking whatever that person taught you and the love that that person shared for you and bring it with you, honor them. And that's, I mean, so death is a little tangent there about death, but you know,
well, let me jump on that too real quick before you jump into heartbreak. I think it's good, and I'm thinking about it in terms of my relationship with my mom as well, and maybe with you, it's like it gave you permission, because it's if I can only imagine if you were growing up and often feeling like you had to be saved, right? So maybe it's part of that validation of like, Dad, am I, you know, just make sure save me if I'm going to make a mistake here. And now it's like, you know what, I know what he's going to say, and that allowed you to maybe step even more into your masculine power, perhaps, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a big part of that with my mom too. But I think you're right in terms of the finality of it too, in the sense of, yeah, there is. It really comes back to, again, surrendering and letting go. You don't have a choice. Like, they're gone, right? Yeah. The breakup, as we move into the heartbreak conversation, to me, when I got divorced, it was so challenging because I kept seeing her. We were sharing the dog. I was still hoping for a reconciliation. You know, I was so codependent, and that was just making it so much worse on myself, you know. But talking more about the heartbreak, how is that?
So heartbreak has been one of my greatest teachers, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I've been through it 4 or 5 times, like legit, like painful, really like painful depression and inducing heartbreaks. And the last one was the biggest lesson in the teacher for me. It happened in 2019. I went to LA. I was living in the Bay Area, and I went to LA for a retreat, work retreat down there. And I came back early on a Saturday. I usually would stay till Sunday and kind of just have fun in LA, but I came back on a Saturday, and I get home, and, you know, we had been having problems for a while. And I said to myself on the trip home, I said, I'm going to let go of all this like angst and like worrying about she's going to leave me and all this. And just, you know what, if she's going to leave me, she'll tell me. That's it. I'm just going to, from this moment on, I'm operating that way. And I get home, I walk into her house to pick up, we had a dog together, and she was watching the dog. We didn't live together. And she sits me down. She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I let go and like surrendered, and then got my answer about 4 hours later.
Wow.
But, you know, as much as we were having problems, like it still wasn't easy at all. Like it was, it was awesome. Like we had a great relationship, and, you know, there was things happening. Again, it was just a deterioration of relationship, and just go, you know, all the things that were happening. And so, you know, it was one of those things where I immediately recognized this feeling of like panic, abandonment, fear. I'm never going to be another girl again. All these things, like these are very familiar feelings rushing in. And honestly, how I was showing up in that relationship was also familiar. Insecure, running, closed off, tendency to reject. Like these things, basically my little protection devices that I'm using, but in a relationship, they show up as those things. So she feels rejected, and she feels, you know, I'm not there, I'm not present. So all this stuff. And so I felt all these things, and I like immediately went and I called some buddies, and I'm like, you know, she broke up with me, and like, I am so fucking bad at heartbreak. Like this, like I don't know why I keep finding myself here. I don't know why this keeps happening to me. I think what I said to one of my buddies. And this was I went down to LA again for a different retreat, and it was a men's group. And one of the facilitators, my buddy, said to me, he's like, well, that's the problem right there, is like, you're asking yourself why this keeps happening to you. Have you ever gotten to the point inside of you where that keeps allowing this to happen? And I was like, oh. Like I was deep in this is like a month out. So I was like still spinning. Yeah. And I looked at my buddy, I was like, bro, like kick me when I'm down. Yeah. But at the same time, like that's what I was there for. Like that's what I'd asked for. And so that triggered me into like finally getting to the bottom of my story about being saved. That's where it really like, that was kind of like the last thing I was holding on to. The last thing that story was holding on to. Like I had saved myself from addiction and gotten sober and I was saving myself in other ways, but this one little last hook was right there. And it was just, this was the moment that it was showing me, like, if you want to get rid of this, like, now is the time. So usually like the heartbreak would take me like years to get over. Like, I mean, 3 years is like my cycle. And so this time I got over it in like 5 months because I finally was like, wow, like I expected her to save me. Like I was there because I loved her and she loved me, but like subconsciously, like I was expecting saving.
Yeah.
Like I was like, so I went from my parents saving me to tennis. I played tennis all through college, saving me, alcohol and drugs saving me, women saving me. And then, so like this was the last one. And so the heartbreak was so brutal in this one. Like I went through a week where it was like actually 9 days where I didn't sleep, not a wink. And it was like, I was seeing, I went to my therapist's office and I looked through the wall and I was like, are there designs on that wall? He's like, no. He's like, you need to sleep, man. So like, this is what heartbreak does to me. And like, and then finally, I was finally in a place where I was ready to like be done with it. Like, I'm tired of, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Like, why does this keep happening to me? Okay. Why does it keep happening to you? Because you keep allowing it to happen. Because you keep going into these relationships with them saving you in mind. What's in it for me? You know, like all these like twisted little like subcontracts that
Getting
happen. Yeah, behind I love you, there's like all these twisted little things happening. Because honestly, from my childhood, one of the traumas was the connection of saving to love. So I basically, like when I said earlier that like I believe I created asthma, I created allergies, I created the choking, I manifested the chaos in my life to be saved because that was proof of love for me. That was how I mattered. So if I wasn't needing saving, like, whoa, like, do I even matter? Like, why am I even here? Like, if you don't need to save me, like, and that's destructive just at its core.
Totally.
Like, there's just no way around that.
Totally.
And so finally I saw two things about this last heartbreak, kind of just like signs or whatever you want to call them. But like the day after it happened, so Saturday it happened, Sunday, like we didn't really break up. We were kind of like, she's like, I need some space, and like, you know, the typical like drawn out breakup thing. And so Sunday I go into Starbucks to do a little bit of work, and I see this lady with a hat, and it said, I think it said, love will find a way. And so it's still burning in my head, my eyes right now. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, we're going to get back together. Like, our love will find a way.
Totally.
And no, what that hat was telling me is that, Sam, go back to self-love, rekindle your self-love. Because I had done all that work around self-love when I got sober. Amen. And I let it fall away because I put all my saving into this girl. So I stopped being responsible for myself. And so that hat flipped its meaning later on to like, love, your self-love will find a way, not the love with her. And then the second thing is that there's a quote that I heard years ago, and it showed up again in my life. And it was, if it broke your heart but opened your eyes, that's a win. And I got like, that was the switch from like, I'm deep in this heartbreak to like, I have gratitude for this heartbreak because my eyes were being opened 100%. Like that was one of the biggest catalysts of my entire life, was that heartbreak, because it opened my eyes to all that story, whether it was a girl or not. Like it was gonna manifest itself again at some point. Like there was no way I was getting out of that story until I said, this is my story and I need to fix it. I need to not rewrite it. I mean, erase that one and write a whole damn new one.
I would say if I could, if this was like a sermon, I'd be like, praise Jesus, amen. You know, I'm like keeping myself from like, yes. I'm sitting here snapping to everything that you said. I think I love that. If it broke your heart, open your eyes, it's a win. And that's certainly what I went through with my divorce for sure. Because I was similarly like, oh no, love will conquer. And little did I know how much I was using, you know, the validation from women to create validation and significance. You know. You said something else though that I think is so powerful, and I think a lot of guys should connect with it. I hope they didn't miss it. But you talked about how you kind of felt like you were creating the asthma, creating because you know, when I've heard Tony Robbins talk about, you know, we have 6 human needs, and one of them being the need for significance, and that we fulfill our needs especially like significance and love and certainty, we fulfill those in empowering or disempowering ways. And you didn't even realize, it sounds like, that you were creating significance by like almost manifesting, your allergies or things that were wrong with you, so that you got attention, right? And that's, they saved you, and it validated that, and so much of this, I feel like, that men need to work on, and you've done such an amazing job grabbing the bull by the horns. It's like taking ownership of, I have to save myself. I have to, it has to come from the inside versus always looking for the answers outside. Right.
Yeah.
So if guys are coming to you to work with you as a coach, thinking that, all right, Sam, fix me, man. I'm all fucked up, but save me. And I've gotten that too from clients. I'm like, I can help you. I'm a guide. I can be your Yoda, but I'm not gonna help you do the work. You have to do the work, right? So it sounds like you've really confronted that yourself too.
It's ownership, man. You got to take ownership, like extreme, radical, blistering ownership of all of it.
Right.
Like all of it. Like without taking responsibility. If I remain in like, oh, I was born with asthma, poor me. Yeah. No, like that's not ever gonna heal, because that will always be an easy default. But if I say no, like I had somewhere along the way, my soul decided that in order to be significant, I have to be in chaos or destruction. Like I need to create significance, and I can't, and it's not going to be like, so for the first 15 years of my life or so, or probably 10 years of my life, it was the asthma and allergies. And then I found tennis, and tennis became my significance. And that's why it was so easy for me to look at my childhood as amazing, because I found something else, and tennis fell away. All that stuff that I operated over came back.
You just found something else, another crutch.
Yeah. And basically tennis was as great as it was for me, and I love it. It's my first love. It was a Band-Aid. It was a Band-Aid on a bullet hole for me.
It's fascinating though, if you think about, there's so many people that I can think of that are really, really good at what they do. And yet, to your point, it really is just a really, fancy looking coping mechanism that has that they've poured themselves all into, because it's their way of finding, like you said, significance. Tiger Woods, for instance, like if you watch that documentary, man, like, dude, the dude is amazing, and yet so much of that is tied to the dysfunction of his relationship with his father. So it's interesting, really, really interesting that you mentioned that. And I think a lot of guys could probably be like, I can just see or hear the wheels turning as they're listening to this, being like, I wonder if what I'm really good at, it's almost like the whole idea of the mess becoming your message, and it's our woundedness that really can ultimately drive us in our passion, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be really careful that we don't create our identities around money, being successful at work, all the things that are outside of us, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why quarantine was hard for a lot of guys.
Oh, myself
because
included.
I mean, it was great for me, but I mean, I had a lot of growth happen, but I mean, I was just for many other reasons, but I think a lot of guys had their identity wrapped up in like, I go to this job, I'm a CEO, I'm a lawyer, I'm a partner, whatever it is. They go to work every day and they dress up in a suit, and like this identity is in that, and then that got ripped away from them in a matter of a week. And it's like, what do I like? Uh-oh, my wife is going to leave me. I'm going to get fired. Like, this is weird. Like, and it's a lot of that stuff. Like, it's a lot of that. Just like, well, I did all this for 20, 25 years. And now I'm not doing that anymore. Like, who am I? Like, what's my purpose? Like, where's my fulfillment? And it was I think it shifted into being a wake up call for a lot of people. But I think that was the initial response, was that like, oh shit. I mean, you saw mental illness spiked when quarantine hit. People were going crazy, like flipping, like going off on their wives and coworkers and freaking out on Zoom, and like people couldn't handle it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, changing the directions a little bit, I mean, but it's kind of maybe on the same topics in many ways. For those that are watching the video on YouTube, you can see that you've got a lot of pretty cool looking tattoos. But for those that are listening, Sam's got a lot of tattoos on his neck, on his chest, and his arms. What, of all the ones that you have, is there one or a couple that are most significant to you?
Wow, that's a great question. Uh, I think the thing about the tattoos is, I would say the hold on and let go are pretty significant, just because it's like real easy to get lost in the middle there. But the thing about the tattoos is that they tell a story because about where I was in life, what I was doing. Like, a couple of them are cover ups, like there's a real journey to a tattoo, like being tattooed. And I didn't start until I was probably 10 years ago when I was 35 or 36. And so, I always say I'm so thankful I waited, because if I had started getting like, I see guys these days, or kids these days, like 18, 19, full sleeves, body. I'm like, for me personally, there's no way that anything about my world when I was 18 is the same as it is now.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't, and I got a tattoo when I was 18, and it sure as shit got covered up, because it was just like, why did I even get that? Like, what was I don't even know what I was thinking. But
well, it's like wearing what you wore in high school and never changing.
Yeah. Boot cut jeans forever.
Yeah, exactly, totally.
So, like a lot of these tattoos do have significance. They meant a lot to me at the time I got them, and I can look back and say, like, take lessons from them all. I've gotten away from the significance kind of, and I've just gotten into like cool looking stuff.
Yeah.
I've only got a little bit of real estate left, so I kind of gotta be real thoughtful about what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, you've got your face, you've got your head.
Yeah, I could go Mike Tyson.
Yeah, you could. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch upon. You mentioned before we started recording, just the whole topic of like saving yourself, why you can't afford to settle at hope any longer. Can you expand on that whole idea?
Yes, I could. I would love to. Thank you. So hope is, first of all, let me just say hope is useful. Yeah. Hope, there's a purpose for hope. And that is like when you're in that darkness, whether that's depression, addiction, fear, anger, heartbreak, whatever it is, when you're in that darkness and you get that, and they call it a glimmer of hope, that glimmer of hope, that's all that's enough. Because that glimmer of hope will ideally triggers you into action. And now when it comes to taking action, you have to believe in yourself to take the action. If you don't believe you can do anything, you're never going to take action. And hoping is very comfortable. It's romantic, it's sexy. Like, people love to talk about hope. Yeah. However, it's bliss. It's easy to settle at hope, because hope and worry both have a physiological effect that make you think you're doing something about a problem, a situation, and a goal. Like, if I hope I get that job, or I worry I'm going to get fired, like, there's no difference between that energy at all. Right. Except the two words. And so, but people will, like, the more they that's why people get in these cycles of worry, is because it feels good to worry. I'm worrying. Like, I'm doing something about my problem. I'm like, no, you're not. You're just worrying. Hope. Like, I'm hoping. Like, I'm hoping, like, that I fall in love, or that my girlfriend doesn't leave me, or that, like, I'm not depressed tomorrow. But, like, you're not doing anything. You're just hoping. Yeah. And so I look at it like hope and worry, or we'll stick with hope, but hope is a rocking chair. Like, you're sitting there on the porch and you're moving, you're doing something, you're rocking back and forth, but you're not advancing at all. Like, there's no advancement there. So you can sit there and rock away all you want, but, like, as I always say, like, rock away on the porch, the world is just passing you by. Like, there's people out there doing things. And so you have to be able to shift from hope into action, and that action will not take hold unless you believe in yourself. And so, and the question to ask yourself to believe in yourself is, if you don't believe in yourself, you need to shift it and say, okay, where don't I love myself? Because belief, the thing that fuels belief is self-love. And from self-love comes discipline and accountability. Accountability and discipline get vilified, like, oh, discipline, it must be awful to be disciplined. Like, come on, live a little. Drill, yeah, exactly, drill sergeant. But really, discipline, when you can shift it, discipline is nothing more than self-love. Like, do you love yourself enough to do the right thing for yourself? Do you love yourself enough to be disciplined to get up in the morning and meditate? Do you love yourself enough to be disciplined to not eat 10 cupcakes on a Wednesday night? Self-love, some nights, self-love is eating 10 cupcakes. Yeah. Most nights it's not. Right. There's a time and a place, but, like, when you can shift, like, when you can just, like, anchor your discipline and self-love, discipline fuels action. And so when you can get out of hope and into action, but as long as that's when things start to happen. But as long as you stay hoping, nothing is going to happen. I would go to rehab and all the time, like, I hope this works for me. I hope it works this time. I hope it wasn't. Yeah, it just nothing ever worked because it was
Right.
just I was just hoping. I was rocking away. I wasn't doing anything.
Mm.
So finally, when it's time to do something, action, just action based in belief, which is based in self-love.
Mm-hmm. And if I hear you correctly, it's like it's also creating a greater sense of certainty, a greater like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to rehab, and I'm going to turn this ship around versus fingers crossed.
Yeah, if you have the belief, if you really, really have the belief, not much can stop you.
Yeah.
Not much. And so one of the best like filters / questions, I have one that I have, and I read one in a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends Upon It by Kamal Ravikant. And it's in any moment that you're doubting, ask yourself, what would I do if I really loved myself right now? So, and emphasize the word really, because if you're doubting, you're not really loving yourself. But if you really loved yourself, what would you do? And it's once you ask that question, the answer becomes clear like that. Because it's like flipping a coin. They say, like, when you're confused about two things, flip a coin. Like, you'll know when you flip that coin what you really want to do, because you'll be like, I hope it's heads. Like, it gives you immediate feedback. And so my thing about the hope and belief is, do you love yourself enough to stop settling for hope and start believing in yourself?
I love that. I think I've lived a lot of my life in this area of doubt, doubt, hope. Now I notice as like a type A individual, I find myself being confused a lot. It's just like, if I just knew. To your point, though, and going back to our conversation about death and surrender and letting go and holding on, it's like the whole conversation of like, sometimes we just need to get an action. Even if you just choose and you realize that's a dead end, well, then now you can go back to that fork in the road and go the other direction rather than sitting at the other. I'm like, should I go left or right? I don't know. I'm going to think about it and just hope that someone's going to save me and tell me which direction to go,
Yeah.
So
the only bad action is inaction.
Yeah. Amen to that. One of the last things I want to ask you before we kind of wrap things up is you mentioned having that moment of just being like, oh my God, a dream that was once mine is now I'm living it, where I'm looking back at this turquoise water, the palm trees. I'm standing in this beautiful, but you said you had done what type of ceremony just then?
Bufo.
What's Bufo?
5-MeO DMT.
Okay.
It's from there's a toad that lives in the Sonoran Desert that actually, I think it lives underground in the mud for like 9 or 11 months a year.
Wow.
And then it comes out and it secretes the venom from its gland. And then the Seri Indians, they harvest the venom. No harm to the toad, but they take the venom and it crystallizes, and then you smoke it. You take one massive hit of this Bufo alvarius DMT, and then you just lay back. And let me just say, the most life-changing experience I've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard it's like strapping yourself onto a rocket and just
they call it blasting off. You blast off. When you come back, you are a different person. Like, that was my first thought when I did it the first time, was like, life will never be the same. Like, that's it. Like, this is I'm forever changed by this for the better.
Yeah, this has been especially with like mushrooms and psychedelics being, what do you call it? Decriminalized here in Colorado, especially too, and we're seeing it more and more throughout the U.S. Just the whole topic of psychedelics, and I know it's been out there with Aubrey Marcus, and a lot of guys have been talking about it for a long time, but I think it's interesting because for me, having grown up without a whole lot of substance usage at all, I found that my analytical brain and my just my consciousness was such a place of safety. I had to have control everything, and just dabbling a little bit here and there, even if it's just with pot, it's like that was so scary to me to even think about letting my mind go.
Yeah.
Where was it going to go? I don't know what was in the darkness, and that was super scary. I want to have you back on after on the other side of your 21 days,
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Because I've never done ayahuasca either, but certainly there's a lot. I mean, I have this type of conversation with guys all the time here in Denver, at least, and online about psychedelics and various things, and as a tool, right? To work with trauma and to get over addiction. And I've heard,
it's so you have to do, everyone talks about integration after a psychedelic journey, which is great. Excuse me. But I was brought to my attention that there's actually two things. One is integration, which integration is like integrating new behaviors, doing things differently, acting differently, like taking what you learned in that ceremony and actually doing it in your life. And then there's the kind of like evolution of that is once you integrate, you start to incorporate. So incorporate, the root word of incorporate is incorpus, which is in corpse, which is in body. So once you integrate the behaviors, the next thing is like embodying the new version, embodying everything. And so that was that kind of like was a massive learning experience for me, as far as like shifting from just doing things to like actually being in the embodiment of those things.
Yeah, it's powerful. We'll spend another hour talking about going deep on a bunch of that stuff, because I'm sure you could enlighten me in a massive way. But maybe we'll do it after you get back from Peru. So, but hey, man, if people want to connect with you, talk about coaching, or just pick your brain, follow you, what's the best way to kind of get in touch with you or follow you?
Instagram's the best way. It's at Sam Gibbs Morris. That's SamGibbsMorris. LinkedIn, I'm kind of active on LinkedIn too. I post a lot of stuff there. You can reach me there. Instagram, email is connect@samgibbsmorris.com. And reach out for struggles. If you just want to take your life to the next level, psychedelic integration, whatever is going on for you at the time, whatever's live for you, I'm here for it.
Amazing. A wealth of knowledge, man. I'm just grateful to have crossed paths with you, and exciting just to hear about your journey, but then to have been following you on social media for a while. It's just cool to be, like I said, in rubbing elbows with guys that are doing the work and coming from, like you said, from kind of light into the dark, back into the light, shows what's possible. It's just, it's inspiring, man. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, brother. I see you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey guys, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. I really hope you reach out and connect with Sam, or at least follow him on his Instagram and on LinkedIn, see what he's up to, because the dude is moving and shaking in terms of doing his own work and then paying it forward. So thanks for listening, Sam. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Yeah, enjoy Peru. We'll catch up on the flip side, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Take care.